Good morning, church family. My name is Trevor, and this morning we are in Luke chapter 11, verses 27 through 28. And prior to this, in Luke chapter 11, Jesus had been teaching his followers about prayer. He taught them the Lord's Prayer. He taught how to petition God for the things you need. He taught about casting out demons and dealing with people's unbelief or hard-heartedness. And so now we get to verses 27 and 28, and it reads, "And it happened, as he spoke these things, that a certain woman from the crowd raised her voice and said to him, 'Blessed is the womb that bore you, and the breast which nursed you.' But he said, 'More than that, blessed are those who hear the word of God and keep it.'" So again, he's preaching, and this lady interjects right in the middle of his preaching and says, these things about Mary, and Jesus just kind of gently redirects the conversation back to the Word of God and keeping it, and he doesn't harshly shut her down. He doesn't dishonor his mother in any way, but he just, again, deals with this lady gently. And the one thing that I really like about what he says here is, he says, "More than that, blessed are those who hear the word of God and keep it." So there's no room for being a special person here in the Bible. It's just hearing the word of God and keeping it. And you can be just as blessed or more than even his own mother. So, and that's straight from the mouth of Jesus there. And one thing I was thinking about here is that Jesus looks at people's hearts, and he kind of rebukes or convicts people or just redirects them based on, I think, what's in their heart. I think about the times when the scribes and the Pharisees tried to trick him or trip him up. When a woman was caught in adultery, he sends them away by just saying, "You with first sin, person with the first without sin, cast the first stone." And then another time, he was walking with his disciples, and they start marveling at the temple and all the beauty of the temple and the donations that it took to build it. And he redirects that conversation in Luke 21, verse 5. He redirects it to the things of the end time. And those end time conversations are something he wanted people to be aware of. He wanted people to know about. These eternal things, not just, this building and how beautiful it was. So how does that apply to us today? First, oftentimes when we get in conversations with people, and the topic turns to, religious things or things of God, things of Jesus, a lot of people are going to try to redirect that away, to a political thing or a denominational thing, just a societal issue. We've got to deal with poverty or this or that, all these kind of social justice things. The best thing for us to do is to always try to just redirect that conversation back to Jesus, back to the Word of God. That's where people are going to be transformed and blessed. So then another thing I think about here in these verses is the distractions that pop up in our own minds daily, and how can we kind of quiet those things. I'm super guilty of this all the time. Just the phone is a distraction. Just thinking about all the cares of today, the worries of work and all the things that I got to do. It's a challenge to kind of quiet those voices, but that's a challenge we need to kind of take on. Another thing I thought about here is I was reading just a couple weeks ago in this book, Calvary Distinctives, which was written by Chuck Smith, and it just goes through, what makes Calvary Chapel different, and why do we do the things we do, and one of the chapters was called The Centrality of Jesus, and it talks about dealing with distractions in services. So one of the things we try to do here at River Rocks is not to let distractions come in. So, we don't have a worship team with a lot of lights and, smoke and all that kind of craziness, rock band kind of thing. It's just very simple. The worship isn't focused on them. It's not an entertainment. Another thing is, we just try to keep the lighting right. We try to keep the temperature right. We even provide an area out in the fellowship hall for families to watch with small children, so that they're going to be fed the Word of God, but not kids being too much of a distraction if they're of a certain age and unable to focus. Chuck Smith talked about women who were in one church that were wearing a certain outfit, and they were doing interpretive dance. They kind of took this upon themselves during worship, and they had to be brought aside and said, that's not for here, that's not for now. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but it was a distracting thing. And so here at River Rocks, we try to reduce the distractions. So the challenge again for us is reducing distractions, keeping our focus back on the Word of God and obeying it, and that is how we are blessed. So I pray that you have a blessed day. Thank you very much.